Have you ever wondered how a piece of land could go through 6 different flags, survive wars, hurricanes, and heartbreak, and still come out standing as one of the proudest states in America? Welcome to StateLineRig. Get ready for another incredible journey to the Texas, and trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why Texans say, "Don't mess with Texas." But before we dive in, if you love stories about history, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel, because trust me, this story is wild. Let's go back, way back, almost 11,000 years back, to around 9,200 BC. Long before anyone called this place Texas, there were people here already, the Paleo-Indians. They were the first ones to call this land home. And by the time the 1st century AD rolled around, Texas wasn't empty at all. It already had a growing population of native people. In fact, by the time Europeans started showing up, there were about 6 major native cultural groups living across Texas. And here's the thing, the fate of every single European who dared to step foot on this land would depend on how these native groups reacted to them. That's a big deal, right? One wrong move, and history could have looked completely different. So who was the first European to even see Texas? That honor goes to a Spanish explorer named Alonso Alvarez de Pineda. In 1519, he became the first person to map the Texas Gulf Coast. But mapping a coastline from a ship is one thing. Actually walking into the heart of this unknown land? That took almost another 10 years of courage. Or maybe just desperation. In 1528, a Spaniard named Pánfilo de Narváez led an expedition into the interior of what we now call Texas. And friends, this journey turned into an absolute nightmare almost instantly. Brutal hurricanes and violent storms smashed into his fleet, sinking 2 ships and killing a huge chunk of his 600 men before they even really began. The survivors were trying to reach Tampico in Mexico, but fate had other plans. The storms blew them wildly off course toward Florida instead. Desperate, Narváez split his men into 2 groups, one marching by land, the other staying on the ships, hoping they'd reunite at a harbor further along the coast. But that harbor never came. There was no safe place to dock. And the 300 men walking by land? They were now under attack from local tribes, starving, and getting sick. Can you imagine that kind of fear? Not knowing if you'll die from an arrow, a fever, or simple hunger. Within a few months, only about 90 of them were still alive. And it didn't stop there. When the last survivors were swept onto Galveston Island, the local native people captured them. Disease kept spreading. Starvation kept killing. Slowly, painfully, that number of 90 kept shrinking. 8 long years later, only 4 men remained. Just 4. Out of 600. Their names were Alvar Núñez Cabeza de Vaca, Andrés Dorantes de Carranza, Hislav Estevanico, and Alonso del Castillo Maldonado. These 4 men had survived years of horror, and now they tried to find their way through the unknown wilderness of the American Southwest and northern Mexico completely alone. Eventually, in 1536, they crossed paths with a group of slave catchers in Sinaloa who helped guide them the rest of the way. They finally reached Mexico City. After everything, after storms, starvation, slavery, and years of surviving the impossible, the last remaining few finally made it home to Spain. But Spain wasn't the only country dreaming about this land. France wanted a piece of it too. And interestingly enough, while Spain kept failing to build any lasting settlements, France ended up creating one almost by accident. In the late 1600s, a French nobleman named Robert Cavalier de La Salle set out to explore the Mississippi River. His real goal was to create a buffer zone between French territory and Spanish territory in North America. But while exploring, he stumbled upon the Gulf of Mexico and claimed the entire Mississippi River Valley for France. That's a pretty huge accidental discovery, don't you think? He went back to France, convinced the king to let him build a colony near the mouth of the Mississippi, both to block the Spanish and to spread French Christianity to native people. King Louis XIV agreed, and La Salle was sent back to build his settlement. But here's the twist. his navigation was off. Instead of landing where he planned, he ended up building his colony much further west, off the coast of Mexico. And that little colony barely survived 3 years before collapsing completely, crushed by disease, hardship, and conflict with the native Karankawa people. When Spain heard the French were building on land they considered theirs, they wanted to remove what they called this thorn thrust into the heart of America. But by the time they got there, disease and the Karankawa had already destroyed the colony for them. Realizing France's plan had failed, Spain saw their opportunity and sent Alonso de Leon to establish a mission in eastern Texas in 1690. This kicked off decades of on and off Spanish interest in Texas. Conflicts with native tribes kept discouraging deeper settlement, but real Spanish efforts finally picked up in the early 1700s after a missionary tried getting help from France to build new missions. That pushed Spain to act fast and reclaim the territory, keeping the French out for good. And finally, in 1762, at the end of the 7 Years' War, France agreed to give up all claims to Texas. Fast forward to 1821. The Mexican War of Independence secured much of Spain's former territories, forming the new nation of Mexico, and Texas became part of it. Mexico opened its doors wide for immigration, hoping more settlers would help balance out ongoing tension with native tribes. But more settlers also meant more unrest. And by 1836, Texas formed its own government and declared independence from Mexico. This led straight into the infamous Battle of the Alamo, a brutal, bloody massacre that shocked and enraged Texans, fueling their fight even harder. The Texas Revolution ultimately succeeded, but instead of staying independent, Texans voted to join the United States. Interesting enough, America didn't even want Texas at first. Presidents Andrew Jackson and Martin Van Buren both rejected the idea, but pressure from Britain, who wanted Texas to remain its own nation, actually pushed America toward finally accepting it. In 1845, Texas officially became a U.S. state. This move immediately sparked tension between the U.S. and Mexico, eventually triggering the Mexican-American War. In the end, Mexico received payment in exchange for giving up Texas and other territories, though they honestly had little choice by that point. Texas had originally claimed even more land, stretching into what's now Colorado, Wyoming, Kansas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico, but gave those claims up through the Compromise of 1850. Just over a decade later, Texas shocked everyone by leaving the United States entirely. As the Civil War approached, fear and paranoia spread across Texas, a period known as the Texas Troubles, fueled by rumors that enslaved people were secretly starting fires. This led to violent lynch mobs and growing hostility toward abolitionists. Texas eventually held a vote, and a massive 76% chose to secede, joining the Confederacy. During the war, anyone in Texas who supported the Union faced brutal punishment, especially in German and Mexican communities, and especially in Cook County, where over 100 Union supporters were arrested and more than 60 were executed. It was a dark, violent chapter. Even after the Emancipation Proclamation and Juneteenth marked freedom for enslaved people, it triggered a new wave of anger and violence from former Confederates. Still, Texas officially rejoined the United States on March 30, 1870. The years that followed brought difficult Reconstruction. Racial tensions grew as the once powerful Black Republican Party in Texas lost influence to white Democrats, reflecting the deep racial conflict spreading across the entire former Confederacy. These struggles carried well into the 20th century as Texas fought to rebuild and stabilize. And as if history hadn't tested Texas enough already, hurricanes, drought, and even the tragic assassination of President John F. Kennedy would go on to shape this state's story even further. So the next time someone tells you Texas is just another state, you'll know the truth. It's a state built on survival, blood, ambition, and endless reinvention. If this story moved you even a little, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone who loves history as much as you do. And if you're planning your next adventure, check the links in the description for must-have travel gear and the best booking deals to make your journey smoother. There's so much more to uncover, so stay tuned because this is only the beginning.